July 12, 1943. Bay of Biscay, 200 miles west of Brest. Marine Stabsarzt Dr. Paul Pfaffinger gripped the conning tower rail as 3 RAF Beaufighters screamed down through the afternoon haze, their cannons already spitting fire at U-441. The doctor, who had never commanded anything larger than a medical ward, watched in horror as Kapitän-Leutnant Klaus Hartmann was struck by shrapnel, blood spreading across the bridge plating. The diving klaxon never sounded. There would be no crash dive this day. In the next 30 seconds, 10 men would die, 13 would be wounded, and every officer, including Hartmann, would be incapacitated. The doctor, whose entire naval combat training consisted of treating wounds, not inflicting them, would have to navigate a crippled submarine back to port through waters swarming with enemy aircraft. Hartmann would survive his wounds, but Pfaffinger's emergency command would become one of the most extraordinary episodes of the U-boat war. The shift from hunter to hunted had taken less than 4 months. In February 1943, U-boats could still detect approaching aircraft with their METOX radar receivers and crash dive to safety with time to spare. By July 1943, death arrived without warning. The narrow window between detection and destruction, once a comfortable 2 to 3 minutes, had compressed to mere seconds. For the men of Germany's U-boat force, the time between the first cry of aircraft and the impact of depth charges had become the difference between life and death. The numbers tell a story of technological revolution. In 1942, German U-boats sank 1,094 merchant ships totaling 7.8 million tons, while losing only 87 submarines, a devastating exchange rate that brought Britain to the brink of starvation. 1 year later, everything had reversed. In May 1943 alone, the Kriegsmarine lost 41 U-boats while sinking only 34 merchant vessels. The reversal was so complete that Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat force, withdrew his submarines from the North Atlantic on May 24, 1943, effectively conceding defeat in the Battle of the Atlantic. What caused this catastrophic reversal? The answer lay in a technological race measured in seconds. The Type 7 U-boat, backbone of the German submarine fleet, could execute a crash dive in 20 to 30 seconds under ideal conditions, diving to 25 meters in approximately 35 seconds. But these specifications meant nothing if the submarine received no warning of approaching aircraft. The Allied introduction of centimetric radar in March 1943, completely undetectable by German equipment, eliminated that warning entirely. Suddenly, U-boat crews found themselves under attack before they knew aircraft were present. The escape mechanism that had saved hundreds of submarines became meaningless when there was no time to begin the dive at all. The first indication of this technological shift came on August 27, 1942. Oberleutnant zur See Hans-Joachim Hesse stood watch aboard U-94 in the Caribbean, scanning clear skies for any sign of danger. The submarine's METOX radar detector, a French-made device that could detect Allied radar pulses from 6 miles away, remained silent. According to every instrument aboard, they were alone. Then Hesse heard it. The distinctive drone of aircraft engines directly overhead. The lookout's cry sent the crew scrambling. Less than 15 seconds elapsed between first sighting the American PBY Catalina and the order to crash dive. But 15 seconds wasn't enough. As U-94's conning tower slipped beneath the surface, 4 650-pound depth charges bracketed the submarine, crushing the pressure hull. The Catalina's pilot, Lieutenant Gordon Fiss of VP-92, had approached from directly astern, using the submarine's blind spot to achieve complete surprise. His after-action report noted, "Target attempted crash dive, but was too late." Those 2 words, too late, would define the next 3 years of submarine warfare. In the war's early years, U-boat commanders operated with comfortable margins of safety. Standard doctrine called for maintaining 4 lookouts on the bridge during surface operations, each scanning a specific sector of sky and sea. On a clear day, experienced lookouts could spot aircraft at 8 to 10 miles, providing 3 to 4 minutes of warning. Kapitänleutnant Werner Hartenstein, commanding U-156, demonstrated the effectiveness of these procedures throughout 1942. Operating in the South Atlantic, Hartenstein's lookouts successfully detected and evaded dozens of aircraft patrols. His war diary from September 1942 records a typical encounter. 14:25 hours, aircraft bearing 045, distance approximately 8 miles. Alarm, crash dive initiated. First depth charges explode 90 seconds after submergence, well clear of boat. 90 seconds of margin after submergence. This comfortable buffer allowed the entire bridge watch to clear the tower, the diesel engines to shut down properly, and the boat to reach safe depth before weapons arrived. The statistics from this period confirm German confidence. Between February and October 1942, U-boats operating in the Bay of Biscay completed 80% of their transits without being attacked. Even when caught on the surface, 90% successfully crash-dived to safety before weapons release. The introduction of ASV. Mark II radar in early 1942 initially seemed manageable for the submarines. The 1.7-metre wavelength radar could detect a surfaced U-boat at 10 to 15 miles, but the emissions were easily detected by the German METOX receiver. Radio operators could tell from the pulse pattern when aircraft had acquired them. The pulses would become steady instead of sweeping. This usually provided 2 to 3 minutes before the aircraft arrived. Squadron leader Humphrey de Verde Lee understood the fundamental problem with night attacks on U-boats. Radar could track them to within a mile, but then contact was lost precisely when visual identification was needed. The submarine would hear the aircraft engines, crash dive, and escape in darkness. Lee's solution was elegantly simple. Mount a 22 million candela searchlight that would illuminate the target at the exact moment radar contact was lost. The first operational Lee light attack occurred on June 4, 1942, when squadron leader J.H. Greswell, flying Wellington L of 172 Squadron, illuminated an Italian submarine, the Luigi Torelli, in the Bay of Biscay. Though the attack failed due to faulty depth charges, the psychological impact was immediate. Darkness no longer guaranteed safety. The first successful Lee light attack came 1 month later. On July 5, 1942, Pilot Officer W. Howell of 502 Squadron caught U-502 on the surface. Kapitänleutnant Jürgen von Rosenstiel, the submarine's commander, had less than 20 seconds from illumination to impact. When U-502 was sunk 6 days later, recovered documents confirmed the crew's shock at being attacked without warning at night. The Lee light compressed reaction time dramatically. A Wellington approaching at 120 miles per hour covered the 1-mile gap between radar failure and weapon release in just 30 seconds. Subtract the time for crew reaction and dive initiation, and submarines had perhaps 15 to 20 seconds to get underwater, insufficient to reach safe depth. By early 1943, Operation Derange deployed 131 aircraft with Lee lights in coordinated patrols across the Bay of Biscay. Admiral Dönitz responded by reversing standard operating procedures, ordering boats to surface during daylight and submerge at night, but this merely shifted vulnerability without eliminating it. March 1943 marked the beginning of the end for U-boat operations. The introduction of ASV Mark III radar, operating at 10-centimetre wavelength using cavity magnetron technology, was completely undetectable by German METOX equipment. U-boat crews began reporting attacks without any radar warning, impossible according to German scientists, who insisted no radar could operate at such frequencies. U-333 became one of the first victims on March 6, 1943, while crossing the Bay of Biscay. Kapitänleutnant Peter Kremer's official report sent shockwaves through U-boat headquarters. No METOX warning. Aircraft appeared directly overhead without detection. Crash dive initiated under fire. severe casualties from strafing. Within weeks, similar reports flooded in from across the Atlantic. U-boats were being caught on the surface in broad daylight, at night, in fog, conditions where they should have been invisible. The mathematics were brutal. A B-24 Liberator equipped with ASV Mark III could detect a submarine at 15 miles and attack at 200 miles per hour. From first detection to weapon release took less than 5 minutes. Without warning, the submarine might have 5 seconds from visual sighting to impact, insufficient even to sound the diving alarm. The psychological impact was devastating. Crews who had relied on their detection equipment for survival suddenly found themselves blind. Trust in technology evaporated, replaced by paranoia. Some boats began diving at random intervals, hoping to avoid being caught on the surface. By May 1943, the Bay of Biscay had transformed from a transit route to what U-boat crews called the Valley of Death. Submarines leaving French bases faced a gauntlet of aircraft equipped with centimetric radar, lee lights, and new weapons. In April and May 1943, 56 U-boats were lost in just 2 months, many within sight of their home ports. The compression of warning time had tactical implications beyond individual survival. U-boats consumed battery power at unsustainable rates, forced to crash dive repeatedly without time to properly charge. A Type 7 submarine could maintain 7.3 knots submerged for just 1 hour before exhausting its batteries. Forced to surface to recharge, they immediately came under attack again. The introduction of the Mark 24 Fido acoustic homing torpedo added another lethal dimension. Dropped from as low as 200 feet at speeds up to 120 knots, this 680-pound weapon achieved a 22% success rate compared to 9% for conventional depth charges. Once in the water, Fido executed circular search patterns, homing on the 24 kHz acoustic signature of submarine propellers. Between May 1943 and the war's end, these weapons sank 37 submarines and damaged 18 more, often attacking U-boats that had successfully crash-dived beyond conventional weapon range. German attempts to restore the technological balance consistently arrived too late. The Naxos radar detector, introduced in September 1943, could detect centimetric radar but only at ranges of 5 to 8 kilometers, insufficient warning when aircraft approached at 300 kilometers per hour. The device's delicate construction frequently failed in combat conditions. The schnorkel, adopted from captured Dutch designs and deployed operationally in early 1944, offered a partial solution by allowing submarines to run diesel engines while submerged. But this innovation came with severe limitations. Speed was reduced to 6 knots. The diesel exhaust created a visible plume. The noise of engines running in the confined schnorkel tube made acoustic detection of approaching aircraft impossible. Dönitz's desperate order of April 27, 1943, for U-boats to fight it out with aircraft on the surface rather than dive proved disastrous. Selected Type 7 submarines were converted into U-flak boats with enhanced anti-aircraft armament. U-441's experience on July 12, 1943, demonstrated the futility of this approach when coordinated attacks by multiple aircraft overwhelmed submarine defences despite enhanced armament. Initially, U-boat crews refused to accept that their technological advantage had vanished. When U-333 reported being attacked without radar warning in March 1943, other commanders dismissed it as equipment failure or crew error. The German scientific establishment insisted that radar couldn't operate at wavelengths shorter than 50 centimeters. Admiral Dönitz himself initially rejected reports of undetectable radar. His war diary from April 1943 reveals skepticism about crew reports. This denial proved costly. Commanders who should have adapted tactics continued operating as if METOX provided adequate warning. U-175, U-192 and U-273 were all lost in April 1943, while their crews maintained confidence in their radar detection equipment. As losses mounted, desperate measures emerged. The order to fight aircraft on the surface represented a fundamental break with submarine doctrine. U-441's conversion to an anti-aircraft configuration added multiple cannons, but the July 12, 1943 attack demonstrated the futility when 3 Beaufighters overwhelmed the submarine's defences, leaving 10 dead and 13 wounded. By autumn 1943, even optimistic commanders accepted that the technological battle was lost. The introduction of American escort carriers meant continuous air patrol even in mid-Atlantic. Kapitän-Leutnant Wolfgang Luth, one of Germany's most successful U-boat commanders with over 200,000 tons of shipping sunk, addressed the reality in his final patrol report. "The enemy can see us when we cannot see him. He can attack without warning. Our survival now depends not on equipment, but on luck." The psychological shift was complete. U-boat crews that had once sung confidently now referred to their submarines as iron coffins. By 1944, statistical life expectancy for a U-boat crewman was 3 patrols. Of 40,000 men who served in U-boats during the war, 28,000 would die, a 70% casualty rate, the highest of any service in any nation during World War II. A Type 7 U-boat crash dive was a precisely choreographed emergency maneuver. The sequence began with the bridge watch spotting danger and initiating the alarm. The electric klaxon sent every crew member racing to diving stations. The bridge watch had to clear the conning tower in less than 12 seconds, sliding down the ladder in specific order. Control room operators opened main ballast tank vents while simultaneously flooding the negative tank, a 70-ton auxiliary tank forward. The bow planes went to maximum down angle, 30 degrees. All available men ran forward to add weight to the bow. The entire evolution required split-second timing. Too steep an angle and battery acid would spill, creating chlorine gas. Too shallow and depth charges would destroy them. American patrol aircraft exploited every vulnerability in this process. The ASV Mark III radar operated at 9.1 GHz frequency with a wavelength of 3.2 centimeters, completely invisible to German detection equipment. The radar could detect a surfaced submarine at 15 miles in calm seas. The Lee light produced 50 million candle power, automatically triggered when radar range decreased to 1 mile. This combination gave submarines less than 25 seconds from illumination to impact. The attack on U-758 on June 8, 1943, demonstrated the new reality. After reporting convoy GUS-9's positions south of the Azores, the submarine came under attack from USS Bogue's air group. The submarine remained on the surface for over 30 minutes under continuous attack, with crew members manning anti-aircraft guns, while others prepared for emergency dive. Only when overwhelming force arrived did U-758 successfully crash dive. 7 wounded crew members forced the boat's return to base. On October 20, 1943, U-256 came under attack from aircraft from USS Block Island. After an unsuccessful crash dive attempt, Kapitän-Leutnant Wilhelm Brauel was killed and several crew members wounded. The submarine's war diary recorded the crew's shock at being caught without warning, despite functioning detection equipment. The mutual destruction of U-571 and an Australian Sunderland on January 28, 1944, illustrated the compressed time frame. Flight Lieutenant R.D. Lucas detected U-571 on radar at 12 miles. Achieving complete surprise by approaching through cloud cover, Lucas emerged at just 800 yards distance, giving U-571 exactly 18 seconds before weapon release. As the submarine's conning tower disappeared, the Sunderland's port wing struck the submarine's jumping wire. Both vessels were lost with heavy casualties, 52 from U-571 and 11 from the Sunderland's crew. The decisive moment came during Black May 1943, when the U-boat force lost 41 submarines in a single month. The battle around convoy ONS-5 demonstrated the impossibility of successful operations. 17 U-boats attacked the convoy between May 4th and 6th. 6 were sunk, 11 were damaged, and not a single merchant ship was lost. The statistics from this battle revealed complete reversal: average warning time before air attack, 8 seconds. Percentage of successful crash dives when attacked, 31%. U-boats able to execute successful torpedo attacks, 0. Admiral Dönitz's diary entry for May 24, 1943, conceded defeat. The enemy's new location devices and weapons have torn our sole offensive weapon from our hands. The submarine war must be withdrawn until new weapons restore the balance. U-boat operations after May 1943 became exercises in survival rather than offensive action. Boats remained submerged for up to 20 hours daily, surfacing only briefly to ventilate and charge batteries. Even these brief surface periods invited immediate attack. The introduction of the schnorkel in 1944 eliminated the need for full surface operations, but created new vulnerabilities. The device required precise depth control, too deep and the valve closed, creating a vacuum that could burst eardrums. Too shallow, and the schnorkel head created a visible wake detectable from miles away. Statistics from 1944 reveal the transformed nature of submarine operations. Average time on surface per day, 45 minutes, down from 16 hours in 1942. Average patrol speed, 4 knots, down from 10 knots. Merchant ships sunk per U-boat lost, 0.7, down from 12.6 in 1942. The compression of the crash dive window had strategic implications beyond individual losses. U-boats could no longer coordinate wolfpack attacks. Commerce raiding became impossible when submarines spent most of their time submerged at minimal speed. The Battle of the Atlantic's outcome was decided by technology. When the crash dive window closed, Germany's hope of strangling Allied supply lines vanished. American patrol squadrons evolved from amateur submarine hunters to efficient killers through systematic training and technological advancement. At Naval Air Station Jacksonville, crews practiced attacks on actual submarines. Mock attacks were filmed and critiqued. Crews taking more than 35 seconds from sighting to weapon release failed and repeated the exercise. By late 1943, American aircraft achieved 1 U-boat kill for every 40 attack sorties, compared to 1 per 200 sorties in 1942. The introduction of escort carriers brought aircraft to mid-ocean. USS Bogue's Air Group sank 13 U-boats in 2 years. These small carriers proved that air power could be projected anywhere in the Atlantic. Lieutenant Commander Robert Hopgood, who helped establish American anti-submarine doctrine, described the evolution. We learned to think in seconds, not minutes. Every procedure was refined to shave time. We knew the Germans needed at least 20 seconds to crash dive. Our job was to deny them those seconds. VPB 110 became the first American squadron to employ Lee lights on January 10, 1945. They perfected the false engine technique, throttling back during approach to create the illusion of distance, then suddenly increasing power for the final attack run. This psychological warfare proved effective against already traumatized U-boat crews. Ultra-intelligence from Enigma decryption fundamentally altered U-boat survival mathematics. The initial breakthrough reading the Dolphin cipher in June 1941 was temporarily lost when the 4-rotor Shark cipher was introduced in February 1942. However, in October 1942, Lieutenant Francis Fasson and able seaman Colin Grazier from HMS Petard boarded the sinking U-559 to recover codebooks. Both men drowned when the submarine suddenly sank, but their sacrifice restored Allied code-breaking capability by December 1942. The statistics reveal Ultra's impact: U-boats intercepted while transiting to patrol areas, 73% with Ultra versus 21% without. Average time from U-boat position report to air attack, 4 hours. Convoys successfully routed around wolfpacks, 67%. This intelligence advantage meant that even perfect crash dives only postponed the inevitable. Submarines forced to surface hours later were simply attacked again. The numbers tell the complete story. 1942, German advantage. U-boats operational, 250. Allied merchant ships sunk, 1,094. U-boats lost, 87. Exchange ratio, 12.6 ships per U-boat lost. Average warning time before air attack, 180 seconds. Successful crash dives, 89%. 1943, the turning point. U-boats operational, 425. Allied merchant ships sunk, 363. U-boats lost, 258. Exchange ratio, 1.4 ships per U-boat lost. Average warning time before air attack, 15 seconds. Successful crash dives, 31%. 1944 to 1945, the collapse. U-boats operational, 375. Allied merchant ships sunk, 132. U-boats lost, 344. Exchange ratio, 0.38 ships per U-boat lost. Average warning time before air attack, 5 seconds. Successful crash dives, 15%. Of 1,162 U-boats commissioned during the war, 785 were destroyed, a loss rate of 67.5%. Aircraft accounted for 250 of these losses, with another 100 attributed to combined air-surface attacks. The human cost was staggering. Of 40,000 men who served in U-boats, 28,000 died, a 70% casualty rate. Herbert Werner, who survived 5 U-boats and wrote the memoir Iron Coffins, described the evolution from confident hunters to hunted prey. We measured our lives in seconds, the seconds between detection and death. Those seconds were everything, and then they were nothing. Werner survived the war, one of only 7,000 from 40,000 who served. His memoir captured the psychological toll. Decades later, he still suffered nightmares, shouting "alarm" in his sleep, forever crash diving in his dreams. Dr. Paul Pfaffinger, who saved U-441 after the July 12, 1943 attack, became a respected physician in Hamburg after the war. In a 1976 interview, he reflected, "I saved more lives in those 31 hours getting the boat home than in my entire medical career. We had perhaps 5 seconds warning when those Beaufighters attacked, 5 seconds between life and death." At a 1985 reunion of U-boat veterans in Munich, survivors discussed their experiences. Reinhard Hardigan, who had commanded U-123 during successful operations off the American coast, reflected, "We went from being hunters to hunted in months. The technology that had protected us, the ability to disappear in seconds, was taken away. When those seconds were gone, we were simply targets." The U-boat experience offers critical lessons for contemporary warfare. Current military systems depend on technological margins as narrow as those crucial seconds. The lesson remains constant. Technological advantages are temporary. Any system dependent on a narrow time margin for survival is inherently vulnerable. Military planners study the U-boat collapse as a case study in technological disruption. Today's stealth aircraft, cyber weapons, and submarine systems face the same fundamental vulnerability. The advantage they provide exists only until an effective counter is developed. The last Type 7 U-boat, U-995, sits as a memorial at Le Beau Naval Memorial near Kiel. Visitors can walk through the cramped compartments where men once counted seconds between life and death. A plaque near the conning tower reads, "In memory of the 28,000 German submariners who perished at sea." The story of the German U-boat's crash dive window represents one of history's clearest examples of technology determining warfare's outcome. Between 1942 and 1943, Allied innovations compressed German reaction time from comfortable minutes to desperate seconds to nothing at all. When centimetric radar eliminated warning entirely in March 1943, the U-boat force ceased to exist as an effective weapon. The human stories within this technological revolution illuminate the cost of modern warfare. Dr. Paul Faffinger navigating a shattered submarine home after assuming emergency command, crews manning anti-aircraft guns knowing they couldn't win, the mutual destruction of U-571 and its attacker. These moments reveal how technology transformed individual courage into statistical inevitability. The strategic implications extended far beyond individual encounters. When the escape window closed, it took with it Germany's only hope of strangling Allied supply lines. The Battle of the Atlantic, which Churchill called the dominating factor throughout the war, was decided not by seamanship or courage, but by the compression of time through technological advancement. The U-boats entered the war with a reliable escape mechanism, the crash dive that could save them from aerial attack. This tactical advantage shaped German naval strategy, enabling wolfpack tactics that nearly brought Britain to starvation. But the same scientific progress that had given submarines their underwater refuge took it away through radar, sonobuoys, and acoustic torpedoes. For the men who lived through this technological revolution, those disappearing seconds defined everything. They had trusted their lives to a narrow margin of time and watched that margin vanish. In 1942, they had minutes of warning. By mid-1943, they had seconds. By 1944, they had nothing. The Battle of the Atlantic was won in laboratories and factories as much as on the ocean. British scientists who developed centimetric radar, American workers who built thousands of patrol aircraft, Allied intelligence officers who broke German codes, they collectively eliminated the U-boat's escape window. Their victory was methodical, not dramatic, technological, not heroic. Yet within this technological struggle, humanity persisted. American air crews dropping life rafts to German survivors, U-boat crews remaining at their posts despite overwhelming odds, the mutual respect between enemies. These glimpses of human dignity amid mechanized slaughter remind us that even technological warfare cannot completely dehumanize combat. The U-boat force that entered the war as Germany's elite naval unit, confident in their ability to disappear beneath the waves, ended it as a shattered remnant. Of the young men who sailed from French ports singing of victory, 7 in 10 would never return. They died because technology stole the seconds they needed to survive. Modern nuclear submarines never surface, making the crash dive obsolete. Yet they face their own technological vulnerabilities: satellite surveillance, underwater sensor networks, autonomous vehicles, that may one day compress their survival margins just as radar and aircraft compressed those of their predecessors. The ghosts of U-boat crews who died believing they had seconds to spare serve as warning to all who place faith in technological advantages. In the brutal arithmetic of technological warfare, yesterday's safety margin is today's vulnerability, and today's decisive advantage is tomorrow's fatal weakness. The final irony is stark. The most successful submarine force in history was destroyed not by superior seamanship or courage, but by the elimination of less than a minute of warning time. Those seconds, counted desperately by lookouts, measured precisely by engineers, lost irrevocably to technology, determined the fate of nations. The story of the 45-second crash dive reminds us that in warfare, as in life, nothing is permanent except change itself. The German submarine force learned this lesson at terrible cost. 28,000 lives lost when their margin of safety compressed from minutes to seconds to nothing. Their sacrifice stands as eternal testament to a fundamental truth. In the realm of military technology, the seconds you count on today will not save you tomorrow.